this is what I look for. When I see a success, I'm looking for anything
to say that they didn't do it on their own?
Detain it.
What happens when the empire built by music's most powerful couple suddenly stands on the edge of collapse? For decades, Jay-Z and Beyoncé have reigned as the untouchable king and queen of pop culture, a billion-dollar dynasty built on music, business, and an image of perfection. But behind the glittering facade, insiders whisper of betrayal, hidden heirs, and a courtroom ruling so shocking it could dismantle everything they've built. Reports claim that a man, long dismissed as just another clout chaser, has achieved the unthinkable, a legal victory that threatens to strip Jay-Z of half his fortune. And because so much of that fortune is tied to Beyoncé's businesses, the blow doesn't just hit him, it drags her into the chaos. The image of a flawless empire is cracking, and the Carters now stand on the brink of a downfall no one thought possible. This isn't gossip about flings or cryptic lyrics. This is a story of wealth, legacy, and betrayal colliding in the harshest spotlight imaginable. And as the truth unravels, one chilling question remains. Will this be remembered as the day the Carter dynasty finally fell? The courtroom bombshell. The shock came like a thunderclap. In a family courtroom that most assumed would never tilt against one of the richest men in hip-hop, a ruling landed that insiders are calling the beginning of the end. Satwat, the man who has spent years claiming Jay-Z as his father, reportedly walked away with a decision so staggering it sent ripples through the entire industry. Half of Jay-Z's fortune. Not a symbolic slice, not a quiet settlement, but an alleged legal victory that could carve billions from the Carter empire. For years, critics brushed off Rymir as a nuisance, a man chasing fame with lawsuits that would never hold weight. But this time, the unthinkable happened. Judges allegedly sided with his claims, acknowledging the possibility that the empire Sean Carter built was tied to a son he refused to recognize. And in that moment, the billionaire image cracked. Behind closed doors, sources say Beyoncé was left devastated. The woman who has stood unshakable on world stages, who has weathered whispers of cheating, betrayal, and scandals, is now described as openly crying, distraught, and inconsolable, not just because of the humiliation, but because this ruling doesn't just target her husband. It drags her empire into the storm. Think about it. Roc Nation, Ivy Park, touring ventures, real estate. Their entire fortune has been carefully woven together. If Jay-Z's assets are divided, Beyoncé's financial world bleeds with his. The queen of resilience, suddenly powerless against a gavel. But as shocking as this ruling was, it was only the beginning. Because what the public didn't see was the decades of battles, denials, and buried stories that led to this moment. And the whispers that more secrets could be waiting in the shadows. The long battle for recognition. To understand how we got here, you have to rewind the clock almost 3 decades. This wasn't some overnight victory. It was the culmination of a relentless fight waged by Rymir and his late mother, Wanda, who spent years begging the courts for one simple thing: a DNA test. Back in the early 1990s, Wanda claimed she had a relationship with a then up-and-coming Sean Carter, long before he became Jay-Z the mogul. When Rymir was born, she insisted he was the father. But every attempt to prove it ran into a wall. Court filings were dismissed on technicalities, cases sealed, evidence buried. Time after time, the system seemed to shut them out. Still, they never stopped. Wanda reportedly showed up to hearings, filed motions, and even wrote letters to judges, insisting her son deserved recognition. She wasn't asking for billions. She wasn't chasing fame. She just wanted acknowledgement. But when you're up against one of the wealthiest, most well-connected men in music, the odds are stacked against you. For years, Jay-Z's lawyers painted Rymir as a nuisance, someone obsessed with chasing clout through litigation. But the longer the fight dragged on, the more people began to wonder, if Jay-Z truly had nothing to hide, why not take a simple paternity test and end it once and for all? That unanswered question became the fuel for Rymir's persistence. And now, after decades of being dismissed, that persistence has reportedly cracked the Carter empire wide open. A courtroom has finally sided with the underdog, delivering a victory so unlikely that it feels less like justice and more like destiny. But this wasn't just about one man's fight for recognition. This ruling may have opened the floodgates for every secret Jay-Z has tried to bury. Because if one alleged child can bring him to his knees, what happens if others step forward next? A mother's claims and past shadows. At the heart of this battle was Wanda, Rymir's late mother, who carried her story until the very end. She claimed that in the early 1990s, before the fame, before the billions, she and Sean Carter crossed paths. According to Wanda, their relationship wasn't a rumor or a fling, it was real. And she insisted that out of that relationship came a son that Jay-Z never wanted to acknowledge. Her words were dismissed by courts, mocked by critics, and buried under legal filings. But Wanda never wavered. In interviews before her passing, she spoke with quiet conviction, saying she only wanted the truth to be known. For her, it wasn't about tearing down an empire. It was about giving her son his rightful identity. And Wanda wasn't alone. Over the years, whispers of other potential heirs surfaced. Names like Letitia Messer, a woman who also claimed Jay-Z was her father, emerged, backed by family members who swore they witnessed the relationship firsthand. Rumors swirled of alleged hush money, secret houses, and quiet payouts meant to keep scandals from ever seeing daylight. Industry insiders whispered of shadowy settlements, stories that were shut down before they could reach headlines. Some even alleged that Jay-Z's fortune had quietly funded silence, checks written to keep names and faces from ever reaching the courts. For years, these stories felt like background noise, the kind of gossip too wild to believe. But with Rymir's alleged courtroom victory, the pieces suddenly don't look so disconnected. Instead, they paint a chilling picture of a past that refuses to stay buried. And if Wanda's claims, and those whispered by others, hold even a grain of truth, then Jay-Z's biggest enemy isn't the courts or the tabloids. It's time itself. Because the longer these shadows stretch, the harder they are to contain. But what makes this story even more devastating is that the fallout doesn't just belong to Jay-Z. Every crack in his past becomes a nightmare for Beyoncé, because her empire is tied directly to his. And behind the scenes, insiders claim she's already taking steps to protect herself. Beyoncé's nightmare. For Beyoncé, this isn't just her husband's fight, it's her worst nightmare made real. Insiders claim that when news of the ruling hit, she wasn't thinking about public image or tabloid headlines. She was thinking about survival. Because unlike most celebrity couples, the Carters didn't just merge their love lives, they merged their empires. Roc Nation, Ivy Park, Parkwood Entertainment, touring ventures, real estate portfolios, even stakes in tech companies. So many of these assets are intertwined. For years, that made them stronger. Together, they looked untouchable. But now, that unity could become her undoing. If Jay-Z's fortune is divided, the ripple effect doesn't stop at his accounts. It seeps directly into hers. Every joint property, every co-signed venture, every dollar tied to his name is suddenly vulnerable. And according to whispers from people close to the couple, Beyoncé knows it. That's why insiders say she's already consulting lawyers, quietly, discreetly, about how to protect her own fortune before it's too late. Some reports even suggest she's exploring divorce, not because she wants to walk away from the marriage, but because she may have no other choice. If she stays bound to Jay-Z financially, the courts could pull her fortune into the same black hole. But if she separates, legally at least, she could shield her businesses, her investments, and her children's inheritance from whatever storms hit Jay-Z next. Imagine the weight of that decision. Beyoncé has stood by him through public humiliation before, cheating scandals, that infamous elevator fight with Solange, whispers of betrayal. She endured it all and transformed the pain into music that shook the culture. But this is different. This isn't about lyrics or image. This is about the foundation of her empire being dragged into a courtroom battle she never asked for. And while the public sees her as serene, composed, and untouchable, insiders describe her as shattered, torn between love, loyalty, and cold, hard survival. If she moves forward with divorce, critics will say she abandoned her husband in crisis. If she stays, they'll say she sacrificed her crown to protect a man whose past could destroy them both. Either way, Beyoncé is trapped in a nightmare she didn't create, and one she may not be able to escape without losing a piece of herself. But as devastating as this moment is, there's another storm brewing. Because Rymir's alleged victory may only be the beginning. And if more people step out of the shadows, Beyoncé's nightmare could spiral into something far worse. More claimants, waiting in the shadows. If Rymir's courtroom victory shook the Carter empire, the whispers of who might come next could collapse it entirely. Because insiders claim Rymir may not be the only one. For years, rumors have circulated that Jay-Z's fortune wasn't just funding his empire, it was quietly funding silence. Whispers of alleged hush money, secret homes purchased under other names, and checks written in exchange for confidentiality agreements have lingered in the background of his career. Most fans ignored them, chalking them up to wild gossip. But now, with one man reportedly breaking through, those whispers are starting to sound more like warning shots. Take the case of Letitia Messer, another woman who once claimed Jay-Z was her father. Relatives of hers publicly insisted they had witnessed the relationship that supposedly brought her into the world. Some even alleged that Jay-Z provided financial support in secret, but forbade her from speaking about it. At the time, it was brushed off as baseless. But today, with Rymir's win, Letitia's story suddenly doesn't look so far-fetched. And Letitia may not be alone. Industry insiders murmur about other names, faces from the past who stayed quiet because they believed the fight was unwinnable. But when one person defeats Goliath, others start to believe they can too. That's the dangerous precedent Jay-Z is facing. Imagine the avalanche if 2, 3, or even more alleged children decide to step forward. Each case wouldn't just threaten his personal reputation. It could drag Beyonce's carefully structured fortune deeper into chaos. Every new lawsuit means more exposure, more discovery, more dirty laundry pulled into the open. And for Beyonce, this is a nightmare with no end in sight. She didn't choose these battles, but each one attaches her name, her brand, her crown, to scandals she can't control. With every whisper that grows louder, her empire faces another crack. Because if one hidden past can bring Jay-Z to his knees, what happens when others demand their piece of the dynasty too? Cracks in the Carter empire. When you think of Jay-Z, you don't just think of a rapper, you think of a mogul. A man who turned street hustle into a billion-dollar empire with his hands in everything from streaming platforms to champagne brands, sports management, and luxury fashion. For years, that image of control made him bulletproof. But with this courtroom ruling and the whispers of more claimants stepping out of the shadows, that bulletproof vest is beginning to crack. Behind the scenes, business partners are rattled. Sources close to Roc Nation claim that some clients and collaborators are quietly reconsidering their deals, worried that instability at the top could ripple down. Streaming ventures like Tidal, luxury partnerships, and even sports contracts connected to Jay-Z's empire are reportedly under review. Nobody wants their name tied to a dynasty in freefall. And then there's Ivy Park, already weakened by its public split with Adidas. Beyonce's fashion line has been fighting to stay relevant. Now, with Jay-Z's financial world under siege, insiders fear that brands may see Ivy Park as too risky to invest in further. If Jay-Z's assets are seized or liquidated, Ivy Park could find itself dragged down in the same financial undertow. Even real estate, the properties in Bel Air, New York, and the Hamptons, suddenly look less like safe havens and more like potential bargaining chips in a billion-dollar chess match. Joint ownership means vulnerability, and every crack in Jay-Z's empire pulls Beyonce's fortune closer to the edge. For the first time in decades, Jay-Z's carefully polished image of untouchable wealth looks fragile. The hustler-turned-mogul narrative doesn't play the same when your business partners are nervous, your assets are under threat, and your fortune is on the line. Because in business, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that Jay-Z is cornered. But in the middle of this storm, one question looms larger than the rest. How will Beyonce respond? Because her next move could either steady the dynasty or mark the beginning of its end. Of Beyonce's next move. Beyonce has always been more than just an artist. She's a strategist, a woman who has mastered the art of turning silence into power. When the world questioned her marriage after Jay-Z's infidelity came to light, she didn't sit down for interviews or issue statements. Instead, she dropped Lemonade, an album that transformed her humiliation into cultural triumph. It was proof that when Beyonce speaks, she doesn't need a press release. She uses art to reshape the narrative. Now, with her fortune and legacy under threat, the question is, what's her next move? Some insiders believe she may already be planning another masterpiece, whether it's a raw, unflinching album, or even a documentary that finally pulls back the curtain on a marriage fans have long mythologized. Such a project wouldn't just reclaim control, it would redefine her as a survivor, a woman who turns betrayal into brilliance. Others suggest she could continue to do what she's always done best, remain silent, to let the chaos swirl around her while she holds her ground, saying nothing, moving in silence, making her enemies guess. After all, that strategy has worked for her in the past, adding to her mystique. But this time, silence carries risks. A courtroom ruling isn't a rumor. It's a headline with financial consequences that silence alone can't erase. And then there are whispers of something far more drastic, that Beyonce may use this moment to distance herself from Jay-Z altogether. Not with a song, not with symbolism, but with legal filings that separate her name, her fortune, and her empire from his. A divorce, whether public or private, could be her ultimate power move. A way to protect her brand and her legacy, even if it means ending the partnership that defined her career for 2 decades. Whatever path she chooses, one thing is certain: Beyoncé's next move won't just be personal, it will be strategic. Every lyric, every silence, every decision will be scrutinized by fans, critics, and business partners alike. And in a world where perception can make or break fortunes, the wrong move could cost her everything. But the stakes don't stop there. Because while Beyoncé decides whether to fight, stay silent, or walk away, the public is already watching her every move, dissecting her body language, her appearances, even her lyrics, searching for signs of what's to come. The public turning point. If there's one thing more relentless than the courts, it's the public. And right now, every eye is on Beyoncé. Fans who once worshipped the Carters as the blueprint for modern love and success are split. On social media, hashtags trend daily, some demanding she stand by her man, others urging her to protect her crown. Every public appearance becomes an investigation. Was her expression cold on the red carpet? Did she step out without her ring? Did her lyrics in a recent performance hint at betrayal? The smallest details become breaking news, dissected by millions. Critics are just as ruthless. To them, Beyoncé's silence looks less like strength and more like avoidance. Some argue she's trapped in a marriage of convenience, forced to protect her brand at any cost. Others claim she's calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to flip the narrative and remind the world why she's the queen. And it's not just about loyalty versus betrayal anymore. It's about survival. Every move Beyoncé makes is tied to her empire. Parkwood Entertainment, her Ivy Park brand, her touring contracts. Business partners, sponsors, and investors don't just see her as an artist. They see her as a corporation. And corporations don't like uncertainty. That's the cruel reality Beyoncé faces. She's no longer just a wife. She's a billion-dollar brand. Her decisions aren't simply personal, they're financial, cultural, generational. And as much as she may want to hide behind closed doors, the world won't let her. Because this isn't just about Jay-Z anymore. It's about whether Beyoncé herself can withstand the storm, or if the cracks in her marriage will finally break the illusion of perfection she has protected for so long. And as the pressure mounts, one haunting question grows louder. Can even Beyoncé survive the collapse of a dynasty? The possible collapse of a dynasty. The Carters were never just a couple, they were a symbol. For years, Jay-Z and Beyoncé embodied the idea of power, resilience, and control. A modern dynasty built on music, money, and myth. But now, that dynasty looks more fragile than ever. Think about it. A courtroom ruling that could split billions. Whispers of hidden heirs waiting to step out of the shadows. Nervous business partners quietly distancing themselves. A marriage caught between love, betrayal, and survival. Piece by piece, the empire that once looked untouchable is unraveling in plain sight. For Jay-Z, the image of the mogul is collapsing. Instead of a visionary in control, he looks like a man haunted by ghosts of the past. Ghosts that money and influence can't silence anymore. And for Beyoncé, the woman who built herself into a global brand, this isn't just scandal, it's an existential threat. Every dollar, every deal, every move is tied to how she navigates the fallout. Dynasties are built on the illusion of perfection. But once that illusion breaks, it doesn't just crack, it shatters. And right now, the Carter dynasty isn't just cracked, it's bleeding. The question isn't whether they can repair their image. It's whether there's even an empire left to save. Because what we're watching may not be a scandal at all. It may be the dismantling of one of the greatest power couples in history. And if the Carters truly fall, it won't just be a celebrity story. It will be a cautionary tale. A reminder that no matter how high you climb, secrets have a way of pulling you back down. For 2 decades, Jay-Z and Beyoncé seemed untouchable. The perfect blend of love, power, and influence. A dynasty that felt bigger than music itself. But now, that illusion is collapsing. A courtroom ruling threatens to strip billions from their empire. Rumors of hidden heirs refuse to die. Business partners are on edge, and Beyoncé is caught in the impossible balance between loyalty and survival. The cracks are no longer whispers. They're fractures tearing through the very foundation of their legacy. What happens next is uncertain. Will Jay-Z fight back in higher courts and reclaim control of his empire? Will Beyoncé break her silence with music, a documentary, or a decision that severs their bond forever? Or will the Carters, the golden couple of American music, quietly fade under the weight of secrets that can no longer be buried. One thing is clear. We are witnessing history. The rise of a dynasty gave us an empire of music, culture, and wealth. But now, the world is asking, are we also witnessing its fall? Because in the end, the question isn't whether Jay-Z can survive this storm. The question is whether Beyoncé is willing to go down with him, or whether she'll cut ties and protect her crown at any cost.